Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. As you can tell, it's just me at the moment. There's no Ryan here, which is kind of a bummer, but it's okay. Ryan had some stuff to do for work. It's all right. It's Friday. We know how that goes. So you just get me today, and we're going to do a little bit of a shorter show, and we'll do an Ask Me Anything, which will be kind of fun. So just want to say happy Friday. I'm sorry, one of my lights is not on. It's really kind of bugging me that not all of them are turning on today. But yeah, welcome to the Kessel Chat, where we talk about storytelling in Star Wars and all the things associated with it. Hopefully you have a good time. I love to do this. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, I just wanted to share some news first. Let's get into that. I'm actually going to test out a second camera. I'm trying to use my iPhone as a second camera here. So let's see if that actually works. Let's switch over and give this a shot. I want to see if it can make this work. It is really not working very well. Probably not. That's okay. We won't worry about it too much. I wanted to try having additional camera angles for you. But yeah, today on the show we're going to do a little Ask Me Anything for this. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer them for you, or do my best to answer them for you. We'll do some research, have a good time with it, and we'll do a little bit of Star Wars news, things like that. And yeah, then we'll wrap up and have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. So to get started, let's jump over to some of the most exciting news. Let me pull up my browser here real quick so I can show this to you because, wow, this was beyond cool. Close all this out. Close all this. Where is it? Okay. Let's do a little screen sharing and boom. If you haven't seen this yet, if you have not seen the announcement for Star Wars Outlaws, this trailer is fantastic. There's been some mixed reviews online. The game doesn't come out till 2024. It is the first open world, I believe, true open world Star Wars game we've ever got. I've never played Red Dead Redemption. It's not my style of game, at least. Anyway, I've never played it. However, I've heard people say from the gameplay trailer that is available for Outlaws that this has Red Dead Redemption vibes to it. So if you haven't checked out the gameplay trailer, I don't want to spoil it for you. However, I am going to bring it up here in just a second so we can actually look at it. But I'm going to move these comments off to the side so I can look at them separately. Yeah, it looks beautiful. Experience the first ever open world Star Wars game set between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. We follow this. I don't know. Her name is Kay Vess. This character right here on the screen, you can see prominent there next to the assassin droid, separatist assassin droid. She is the main character, and in the gameplay, I'll pull that up right now. Let's make sure this is muted so we don't get any sort of like echo. Yeah, mute that. In the gameplay, make it full screen. There we go. Look at that. This gameplay feels fantastic. Aussie Star Wars Nerd said, oh, that didn't work. It feels a lot like GTA with a lot of it. It's going to be awesome when it releases. Yeah, I totally agree. Interesting. I hadn't got the GTA vibes from it, but I guess I can see that now. It's fantastic. This just looks so good. The graphics look beautiful. The way, what I think I love about so much of the Star Wars content that's coming out, that's being announced, is it fills in gaps, not just in the story, but in the world building that we've missed. You know, these time periods like between the Empire and Return of the Jedi, we skip so much when we go from Empire to Return of the Jedi and how the next movie starts, that we don't understand a lot. We're left to sort of infer or assume a lot of the story that happens between the two movies. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That happens with any type of movie out there, even with books. Very rarely do you have a book that even picks up immediately after the previous book in like a trilogy or a, duology, etc. But in Star Wars in the movies, there's always these massive time jumps. And while it does leave room for other things to fill those gaps, I find that between Empire and Return of the Jedi, there's a lot that happens. I mean, Luke alone becomes a full, self-protested or professed full Jedi Knight. But there's so much more to this galaxy than the Jedi. And as much as people love the space wizards and love lightsabers, I love all of that too. If you think about it, when Luke first meets Obi-Wan, and Luke makes some comment about the Jedi, and Obi-Wan said, when he was younger, 10,000 Jedi Knights, were the shining beacon of the Republic before the Empire came. If we just take that number in perspective for a minute, 10,000 for an entire galaxy that contains probably millions of worlds, trillions of people, beyond trillions of people, the likelihood that anyone's ever even seen a Jedi is so small, realistically, outside the core, or even the mid-room for that matter, that what it tells me is that there are so many more stories to be told about the people in the galaxy, because by and large, these stories are made up of the regular people, not of the Jedi. I love the Jedi, don't get me wrong. I just really love seeing the effect on regular people, because this is who we can identify with. We can more closely identify the struggles of Kay Vess in this game or in other games than we have ever been able to with the Jedi. Not that there's not things you can't attribute to the Jedi, but you feel like watching Andor was a really good example of this. Ken North said there was a great book. I feel like this will pick some of it too. Ken, was there a book specific related to that it kind of inspires this movie, or are you talking about books that just take place between those two movies? I'm kind of curious, because there have been books, and there are many of books, and I probably have one right here. Give me a sec. There's multiple comic books. My guess is like Dr. Aphra, this particular issue right here. This is issue number 32 of the current run. Likely takes place between Return of the Jedi and Empire. Shadows of the Empire. Obviously, it's not canon anymore. It hasn't been canon in a very long time. I don't know. Actually, no, take it back. I shouldn't say it that way. It was never canon, like any of the extended universe. But that doesn't mean it's not a beautiful story. They're very enjoyable. Matter of fact, I think I have someplace here. I actually have the Shadows of the Empire like omnibus someplace. It's fantastic. Like, the exploration of what could have occurred in that time period is really, really interesting. But that's what I'm so excited about with a game like this, is we get to explore so much more of the galaxy, very much like we got to see in Jedi Survivor. We get to see a lot more about what the galaxy could look like or should look like that we've never experienced before. And we get to do it from the regular person's perspective. Like, Jedi Survivor is beautiful. Like, you get to play as a Jedi and all these things, but what is it like to be just a person living in one of the villages in Jedi Survivor? What's it like to be a person trying to struggle and live your life? There's a whole interesting set of experiences that these characters have, and we're watching it happen on the screen right now. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is actually one of the longest gameplay trailers I think I've ever watched. It's just going. It's not even halfway done yet. It's wild. Oh my gosh! There's an assassin droid wearing a trench coat. Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. This is so cool. This just looks so cool. Ken said it is no longer canon. You know what? I think it's a whole other show. Ryan and I've talked about it a few times. Unfortunately, Shadows of the Empire was never canon, according to Lucas, but it honestly doesn't make any difference, right? It really doesn't matter whether it's canon or not. Those stories that were, like the Kenobi book I have over here, it was never technically canon. All these extended universe books, they're wonderful stories, and they as we've seen Filoni do and Jon Favreau do with so many of these movies and TV shows, and even a lot of the comic books that have been coming out, is stuff, events and stories and characters that existed that we were introduced, like Thrawn, in the extended universe, are either influencing or directly coming into what we're seeing in Star Wars today. And I think that's wonderful. Like, that's a good way to draw on things that have already been done, but not to repeat it, not to come back and say, I'm going to do the same thing that was done before. Like, bring in Thrawn in exactly the same way that they did in Heir to the Empire, the Timothy Zahn original trilogy, yet still bring him in and all his characteristics and all those things. So, you're totally, it was absolutely marketed like crazy. Let me see if I've got it. You've got the game trailer to watch. Let me see here. I think it is... Oh, no, I was wrong. I don't have Shadows of the Empire. What I have is the Epic Collection of Dark Empire, this series. This kind of graphic novel, omnibus sort of book. But yeah, they're super fantastic. This game is just looking so cool. All right, I'll let you watch the rest of this game another time. But you can just go to StarWars.com and find it. It's on their main page here, along with screenshot galleries. There's tons of beautiful screenshots. These landscapes are just gorgeous. And I have to say that I love some of these worlds, like this one that is being featured here. The sprawling landscape of Toshara. that Kves is on in this image, it reminds me a lot of like Bogano and the other planets that we've seen in Jedi Survivor. So I like that we're going to get more of this type of storytelling in Star Wars. I was going to show you some more comic books here in a little bit, but the reason why I love this so much is, like, here's an example. So if you've read any of the Dr. Aphra comics, you've probably recognized this character, Sana Staros. She got her own series, her own comic series recently. What I love about comics, these omnibuses, the High Republic books that are here off to the side of me on my shelf, etc., is and these games, is we have a chance in these games to explore story elements and world building in a way that you just can't do in a TV show or in a book, or sorry, in a movie. And I love TV shows. I love movies. I love watching them. Ryan and I've talked a few times about this recently, that we both agree that, we're both very much in agreement that it's, while the Ahsoka show and others, Ahsoka I think will still come out on time, but others like The Acolyte and other projects are being obviously pushed out either indefinitely or for multiple years because of the writers strike and SAG joining that as well, which is all, I'm glad that's all happening. I'm very glad that's all happening. They deserve what they're asking for. What he and I actually kind of see as a silver lining here is that by pushing these projects further out, he and I both agree that, we could use a little less Star Wars. I know your first thought is like, wait, Jeff, what the hell are you talking about? Why would you want less of this thing? I don't actually want less Star Wars. What we both mean is that we want less, it's not that we want less movies or TV shows. We just feel that it's okay for there to be a longer period of time between a TV show and or a movie coming out than, no offense to the MCU, but like the MCU has been doing for several years, where they, release 3 or even 4 movies in a given year. I thoroughly enjoy watching all those movies. However, and I've picked on Quantumania a few times on this show, and I'm only picking on it because it was a recent one that I saw. It's a great movie. The problem with it for me is I don't really want to watch it again. It was entertaining, but I have seen so much MCU in the last year that I'm kind of MCU'd out at the moment. I'm okay with having more time before the next thing to really get excited and do other stuff. The downside for the MCU to me is that I'm not a big fan of reading that side of Marvel comics. Obviously, I read a lot of Marvel for Star Wars. I'm much more of a Star Wars fan. And so what I'm loving is that, hey, having Ahsoka later this year and then having the Acolyte sometime next year, it could be 6 to 8 months after the Ahsoka show. I love this. And hopefully Ahsoka, like Kenobi, will just be one season and that's it. Because I love the idea of a point-in-time story that can be told. It doesn't have to be a series. It can be a point in time. Mandalorian just wrapped up not too long ago. But we can fill a lot of those gaps with other things. Like, in 2024, Star Wars Outlaws, Jedi Survivor, the comic books. It's okay to wait because we can fill our time playing games and learning story. The games are not just for the sake of gameplay. They contribute to the overall story. Reading comic books and, the Darth Vader Black and White series. Getting into the High Republic if you haven't done that, and I highly suggest that you do if you haven't. It adds so much more that you cannot possibly put into a TV show or a movie in the same way, that by the time a movie or a TV show does come out, it's this whole other thing you get to get into in a different modality of storytelling, through that different medium, and it just makes it feel so much more impactful. And I really love that, and I appreciate what that does to our psyche. Ken said, we waited years between the original trilogy and the prequel. Yeah, I'm okay with a small wait if it equals good stuff. 100%. 100% agree with you, Ken. I could not agree more. Like, I saw the first time I saw A New Hope when it was still just marketed as Star Wars. My dad brought it home on VHS when I think I was 5 or 6 years old, so that'd be 85 or something like that. And then, watch the other movies on VHS. My dad would rent them for me over the next couple of years, over and over again. I didn't read my first, what we now call an EU book, which was the Jedi Academy trilogy. It's on the shelf behind me. I didn't read that until the early 90s, shortly after it came out. But you're right. Phantom Menace didn't come out until 99. That was 2 years after I graduated high school. And then each of those movies came out multiple years after each other. They weren't one after the other after the other. It was multiple years before you got the next story. I'm good with that. I really hope that we can continue that because I think it'll help people become more immersed and be willing to try new forms of storytelling, like the comics or, like these beautiful print books. And like for the High Republic, they've been doing a lovely job of having adult books. So here's one of the examples, Battle for Jedha, as part of Phase 2. you can have adult books, middle grade or like youth books, and then you can young adult books, and then you can have youth books. All three are good for different audiences, but they're all telling stories in part of this new universe, and you can read any of them or all of them and gain a different perspective than you could have before, which is really cool. And they even broach, if you didn't know this, they even broached into manga. So in the first first phase of the High Republic, they did The Edge of Balance 1 and 2, which are beautiful manga. And then the most recent one was released, if I have it here, called Precedent. They just released a few months ago, I think back in April. And it's awesome because it's, again, another style of storytelling. In manga, black and white, different style of artistry, which contributes to the story, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I beat that one to death. I have beat that one down. Some of the recent, what did Darren here say? Darren Moser. Some of the recent books have been the best. I 1,000,000,000% agree. And it's not just the High Republic. I'm a massive High Republic stan. But if you look at, like, on my back shelf here, the Thrawn, the most recent Thrawn trilogy, the Ascendancy trilogy from Timothy Zahn, or Brotherhood was fantastic. A Dr. Aphra book, what is it called? Alpha Squad? Alpha Squad, is that what it was? The Alphabet Squadron novels. Those are really good. There's just so many. There's so many books out there that tell these different stories from different perspectives. As a matter of fact, if you haven't read the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, Hera Syndulla is prominently featured in that trilogy. And it's not it's an easy read technically, but it's not a, thanks Ken North, I appreciate that. Just threw it in the chat. Alphabet Squadron. Thank you. It's not a hard read, but it is complicated in the ways of emotions. Just like we're finding with the High Republic, it's triggering to your emotions because it's real people experiencing real problems, obviously in a made-up universe, but real problems in ways that us as people can identify with. We can connect ourselves with that and read them and go, oh my God, I understand what that person's going through. And then it explains the pain they deal with, and you get to watch how they process. Or in the case of the Kenobi TV show, I've said this before on this show that I have major anxiety. I'm on medication for anxiety. I'm neurodivergent. I battle with a little bit of depression on the side, as well. Like it's something fun. When I watched Obi-Wan or watched Kenobi, the first 2 episodes specifically, I watched that show and I'm like, this is a clear example of a human who is not allowing themselves to process their trauma in a healthy way. This is what it looks like when you go, God, in this case, 10 or more years, and you don't deal with the trauma you've experienced in your life. You don't see somebody, you don't talk to somebody about it. You literally put yourself in isolation and then try to call on your former master who's dead and then, as part of the cosmic forest for their help on something. That is not a healthy way of living your life. I watched that and I'm like, I was tearing up in the first 2 episodes. I'm like, oh my God, I recognize all of this. I get why he feels the way that he feels because, my God, this is what it felt like before I started going to therapy and doing the things that I need to do personally to take care of my mind, my mental health. And I love that about the Kenobi show. Obviously, Jedi are involved in that show, so it's great for that reason. But I think it also has the added benefit of allowing us as people to really identify with the characters in the show. So if we give it more time, then those things can have a greater impact. Andor just as much. Dan Bozer said, I'm excited for Star Wars Outlaws, especially Indy 5. Totally agree. Confirm for me, Dan, because I haven't watched all of it. Indy 5 is the assassin droid? No, not assassin. They're not assassin droids, right? They were separatist stealth droids? I don't know. Tell me, maybe they were assassin droids? I don't remember what their names were. Let me know in the comments what their actual name was. Ken said, and also deals really well with the Imperial officer integration in the Republic. Yes, 100%, because that's got to be its own sort of problems when you've been laced. Your entire life has been laced by a fascist, dogmatic, stay in line or else regime. How do you deal with a bureaucracy and a people that are not as cohesive as what you're used to? What you're used to is also terribly fascist and really horrible to most people. Okay, there's that. But there was a structure involved that if that's all you knew, how do you go to a place that almost seems like complete chaos? It's such a great perspective on these. Thank you, Dan. The Commando droid. That was the name. I was blanking. So I said assassin, meant Commando. Thank you. Thanks, Ozzy. You got it too. I appreciate it. All right, let's see. Moving on. The next thing I wanted to bring up is what else was happening in Star Wars news this week that was really interesting. There was something else that was on my list. I think it was actually High Republic stuff that I wanted to talk about. So the High Republic we're in phase 2. I don't know. Raise your hands or say something in the comments if you've been reading any of the High Republic print books, comics, any of them. I'm very curious, but so I just picked up my latest batch of books from my local comic book store, which included the latest issues of High Republic Adventures, issue number 5, and then Star Wars: The High Republic. This is the main line, number 10. This is called The Final Face-Off on Jedha. The reason why I wanted to talk about the High Republic, and with Ryan not here, I just get to ramble about the High Republic as much as I want to. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is Phase 1 was so much about, look, this is what it could look like in, 200 years, 150 years, 200 years before the New Republic, before Anakin was born, essentially, all of that. 200 years in the past, what was it like? What were Jedi like? And you get to see, there's bad sides to everything. Jedi were in their prime, and so was the Republic, but it doesn't mean that things were all unicorns and rainbows across, the whole galaxy. And I love that. Like, we get a whole new perspective on the Jedi, their own personal connections to the Force, how they do or not closely follow the dogma of the Jedi teachings, which is really interesting. If you haven't read them, you'll see very quickly that most Jedi don't even ever go to Coruscant. That's not even where they do the bulk of their teaching. They learn on remote outposts on all these planets, and they're just there. The Master and Apprentice and others are just there to help the people of the planet. The apprentices can pass their trials there and maybe at some point be called back to Coruscant to go get their own mission later on. But most Jedi don't grow up in the Jedi Temple. They grow up they may have a creche there or a local temple, and then they move on as a Padawan on another planet. And it just gives a whole other perspective on what the Jedi could be, what the galaxy could be, what the Republic could actually be like. It's also very chaotic. And then when we get into Phase 2, which jumps back another 150 years, so we're talking 350 years, give or take, before Anakin is born, we get into a time period that's even more chaotic. That one of the things I've been building a cosplay kit around it's a High Republic cosplay kit. I'll be going to Fan Expo in Denver here soon, in a couple weeks actually, to wear, is the idea of a Pathfinder team. In the High Republic, what they touch on is that hyperspace is not very well explored at that point, 350 years before what we're used to. And that's not that long ago, but hyperspace is not very well explored. There's known routes, but the way that they're happening is by prospectors. And we hear about like the Santekas, and we hear about the Grafs. There are these two big families that are doing hyperspace prospecting. The Republic that itself actually sends out these prospecting teams. They call them Pathfinder teams. They're basically 2 or 3 people working on a ship, engineers, whatever, that are prospectors that look for hyperspace routes, test them, check their viability. And then they usually have accompanied with them like a Jedi Master and their apprentice, or one or two Jedi Knights. And those Jedi will stay with them for years on end. That's their assignment. And they're literally out prospecting in the Outer Rim and the Mid Rim and other places looking for new hyperspace lanes that can be opened and tested and verified. It's never been touched on before. It has been talked about in brief, but never really talked about how does it work? What does it look like? And we get a fair amount of information about these Pathfinder teams. I love that. There's other elements too, like the Jedi Wayseekers. I'll talk about them another time, but the Pathfinders really amaze me because we get to see again a whole new view on how do people live their life in the galaxy. And they may get to interact with the Jedi in a very different way, much more close constraints than other people would. And they get to see a whole other side. The Jedi in those cases may not behave like other Jedi because they're kind of, out in the wilds for so long. And I just love how this is impacting the stories overall. It's just absolutely beautiful to me. Cool. Those are the big ones I had today. Without Ryan here, we're going to keep the show a little bit shorter. But for everyone watching, Ken, Darren, Aussie Star Wars Nerd, anybody else who's out there watching right now in the live stream, and Team Replay, absolutely post questions if you're watching this in the replay, and we'll definitely get back to you. But for anyone watching live, I'm very curious if any of you have any questions about or comments about that we want to explore here live about Star Wars mythology, how things affect the stories, what you want to see in characters and upcoming projects. Post it in the comments, and I'll throw it up on the screen and we can talk about it a little tiny bit. So yeah, there's that. I'm gonna pull up. Let's go back to the main StarWars.com real quick. While anyone's thinking about any questions that they might have and want to share, let's go back to the main page because there was some really good Star Wars news. I'm gonna share this again. Let's go back to StarWars.com. So no, not Indiana Jones stuff, although that's cool. Outlaws. Premiere date revealed. If you didn't see this is fantastic. The Ahsoka premiere date has been officially announced. It is, where was it again? August 23rd. Wednesday, August 23rd, which is beyond cool. Every Wednesday after that, I usually get lucky enough to participate in a like watch-alongs, ride-alongs, so to speak, with the Dark Side Divas crew. That's a Star Wars podcast, as well as a TikTok account. So check those out if you like those. They do usually watch-alongs for their community members in their Discord channel. That's a lot of fun. It's a really healthy and beautifully safe community. So definitely, participate in that. But yeah, the Ahsoka trailer. Let me pull that up real quick. I'm getting joined by my son who's watching. I'll leave that muted. But this is the latest Ahsoka trailer. I think this has got some additional elements that we hadn't seen before. A couple small things, including, I think we just get the same amount of Thrawn, but this is really cool. I like that we're seeing Hera more. I like that we're seeing Ezra a little bit more. We get to see a little bit more lightsaber action. I think the latest trailer may have removed Ray Stevenson's character from the trailer. We'll have to wait and see here. Oh, yeah, they removed him from the trailer. I mean, it makes sense. He passed away. Let me pull that back up again. I don't know if any of you caught it. You have to kind of watch the trailer and listen. But when you get to, did anyone catch it? This droid here in a minute. This droid that Ahsoka is talking to. Does anybody else recognize who that droid is? It's not the droid she kills right here, but does anybody else recognize who that droid is? I forget the name, but that droid, if you go back to the Clone Wars, the animated series, the Dave Filoni animated Clone Wars, that droid was the one that would follow every single group or crush of Padawans to go build their first lightsaber and would instruct them on how to build their lightsaber hilt, and has been doing it for hundreds of years. That droid is extremely old, and the fact that she still encounters that droid, and just like in the Clone Wars animated show, it was voiced by David Tennant. It's also voiced by David Tennant in this show. So there's a really interesting connection, a really cool set of through lines that exist in the Ahsoka show. Go back here real quick. Darren threw up. He did not literally throw up. He posted a comment. Sorry, we had a little bit in Solo in season 3 of Mando, but I think it would be interesting for the droid rights and slavery connection to finally come to a head. Ooh, yeah. How we treat droids, are they sentient, etc. That is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, especially with how they treated the Imperial prisoners building those pieces of the Death Star, which was so fascinating. In Andor, it would be really interesting to see how that could play out on some planet someplace. Like, what happened to all the Separatist droids? We know that from some episodes of the Clone Wars that not all the droids were destroyed or defeated. They're still left. I mean, one group was at least left on a planet that Rex and those had to battle, and then they let that group go. They let them go off and do their own thing. What else could we see? What could they build? That would be fascinating. I'd be very curious. Very curious. Awesome. Well, listen, it's 2:30. I appreciate you all hanging out with me for a short show this week. It's really cool. Dan, Aussie Star Wars nerd, Ken, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you chiming in and providing some context here. It's always fun. Always love having community members on the show. If there's more things in the future you want to have us talk about, let me know. Just ping us on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever you want. Message me directly. Happy to incorporate those. One last thing Darren said, we start to get some droid life in Mando season 3, but for the most part we never deal with this population that does all the work. It's totally true. It's interesting because I'm reading the it's not close by right now, but I'm reading Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. I'm in the 3rd book right now, and what you're describing very much reminds me of the Ska in that series in a lot of ways, not all the ways, but in many ways, and that's kind of an interesting parallel. All right, I'm going to wrap up. For everyone watching, I really appreciate you being here. We do this every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. This week, as you can see, it's just me. My co-host Ryan had some stuff going on personally, so he wasn't able to make it today, which is, no worries. We're working on getting some guest hosts, so if you'd like to be a guest host, ping me and let me know. Message on Twitter or on any of the platforms we stream on, and I'm happy to get you an invite to be a guest host with Ryan and I on the show, and we can talk about things and stuff. We're here to talk about storytelling in Star Wars, so there's a lot of lore and a lot of really great creators out there here on YouTube and other platforms that spend their time talking about lore and breaking down the lore details. Lots of great creators. So we opted on this show, if you're just catching us for the first time, we opted on this show to spend more time thinking about the storytelling side of things. The sort of Joseph Campbell hero's journey, the mythology, what makes the psychological effects occur as they do in these shows. That's where we spend a lot of our time. We touch on the lore, of course, because it's a key component of Star Wars, but we love to talk about stories. So if you're interested in joining, ping me and let me know. I'd love to have you on the show. Otherwise, we do the show on Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific. I also do a show where I have a co-host named TJ on TikTok, and we do a live stream every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time where we do a book reading club. So we're actually reading books live on TikTok. She goes live on her account, and we jointly share. And right now we are reading, where is it? We are reading, as part of Phase 1 of the High Republic, we are reading Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. If I can get my camera to focus there for you, there you go. So we're reading this. We're a little bit more than halfway into the book, and it's a lot of fun. So if you haven't read these, join us. You can read along. You can listen. Super fun. But we're really here to all propagate the stories of Star Wars. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, weekend, and we will see you next week.